Welcome to the Hole in the Head podcast. This week we're talking British projects. The Ariel Square Fours have been delivered, and one has already hit a major milestone. Here's Andy and Blaine.
Andy, this is the episode where we talk about both leaving home, searching for British junk, and seeing if we screwed ourselves or not. I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, it's funny. Oddly specific, but 100% true. Driving real far to find a British thing and bringing it back.
And hoping that it wasn't a complete folly. So let's see what happened. Where have you been going and what have you been getting?
Well, so I recently virtually acquired the Ariels, Squares Four, and we now have them in our possession.
That's right. Yes,
we own and have two Ariel Square Fours.
So now we can talk about the deep buyer's remorse or the deep celebration about feeling terribly successful and smart. Let's see what we felt, Andy. You go first.
Okay, so I feel great about mine because, well, you go first, and I'll say because I have a feeling I'm going to have the opportunity to rub it in, and I don't want to waste that. So,
yeah, of course.
So I brought you a pile of Ariel to Tucsonish, Arizona, and you took receipt of your sight unseen Ariel Square Four purchase. Mark 1 Ariel Square Four purchase. How do you feel?
1951 Mark 1 pile of junk. I knew it was a pile of junk when I got it. I'm totally fine with that because what I was really interested in was restoring a motor and putting it in and making it look somewhat period correct. I'm not at all tied to having it all be the same year. I'm not at all tied to matching numbers. And so for me, it was worth just buying something that had a motor that could be, a vintage bits bike that I think I can take the kind of the best of those years, kind of a resto mod with it. So like I won't mind putting a better front wheel and brake on it. I won't mind doing anything that can be upgraded. I will. But I love the Ariel Square Four motor. The idea of that engine is so appealing to me. And you arrived and opened your trailer, and in the back was way less shit than I thought I bought. Because I thought, that's it?
Yeah, it's just two handfuls.
It's like, what? That's the whole thing? And it was really just a motor and a frame. There were a couple wheels tossed to the side. I ended up buying a tank from someone else that came in the deal, but I do have a vintage tank for it, which I was excited about. But that's pretty much all I got. And so I'm going to have to round up a front end for it and triple clamps and all kinds of stuff that I'm interested in. But I'm thrilled with it. I don't have any remorse over it. But then again, I have no idea what I have. The motor does turn over, but there's no compression. So, and I have a gearbox that goes through gears, but it's semi apart. I have enough to start dreaming about the project and what I want to look at. And I know that I'm going to do a complete, go through everything. And that means I'm going to have to start out by taking the motor down and doing the dreaded clean out the sludge traps, not because I want to do it, but because the internet demands that I have to do it. And I'll maybe let you explain that a little bit further because you're kind of on the edge about what to do about that.
Well, you're in a position where you would be irresponsible if you didn't, because the engine is you're so far from getting it into the frame anyway. Like at this point, the engine's in there in pieces. You may as well just go ahead and pull the crank.
Right.
Whereas mine is all together, but just very rusty and squeaky. Like it needs lubrication and a tune-up. Which is, but I don't want to downplay it, but it needs a lot. But
it looked like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
It just didn't look like a yard sale, collection of junk. It looked like a motorcycle.
Yeah,
it had a tank and it has fenders, has a seat. It turns over.
Yeah, well, it's funny. The seat, I found out really quickly what the previous owner used for fasteners on the seat. So in order to attach the, bad vinyl faux leather to the degraded foam, he used deck screws.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I just jumped right on it.
And it went right into your ass.
And I jumped right back off. Yeah, and I was like, well, that was okay. So I tossed that, or at least stripped it, and it's like one of those beds of nails. You know what I mean? Like it's just terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get a aftermarket, maybe a solo seat for it. But I got mine to Oklahoma, got it off the trailer. It's heavy. It is a bear, that bike.
Yeah. This
Um,
is a lot of metal moving this to get this thing to move around, man.
doesn't have a side stand, doesn't have a center stand.
Okay.
And so you got to lean it. But I ended up pre-ordering some bits from Dragonfly. Center
So
stand.
Dragonfly is kind of the world-renowned supplier for aerial
Yeah.
old junk and a couple other bikes too, but yeah.
Got some pieces, so I'm able to stand it up anyway. And here's where I get to gloat. Okay, so I didn't want to just strip it down because it's a long-term project. Like it's going to take a lot of things. And so to do it justice, it's going to have to come apart completely, if nothing else, to get cleaned and put back on so that it functions. All the things function, the grounds, etc. But I, of course, couldn't help myself. So I put some fresh oil in it, took the carb off, cleaned the carb. I adjusted the valves, you know what I mean, and got everything. New battery, positive ground, by the way. Got everything on and kicked it over a few times, sprayed some carb cleaner, and Blaine, it fired up.
Oh my God.
It runs. I have a running Ariel Square Four.
Oh yeah. Well, congratulations on that. But where do you stand now on the demand of the internet legend is that an Ariel Square 4 can't possibly run unless the sledge traps have been cleaned. And let me just quickly explain to everybody the theory of this of having to do this is because there's an oil passage that gets blocked in the crankshaft, and you have to disassemble the entire motor to clean it out, and then put it back together, and then you got to stay on top of it. But everybody is afraid to run an Ariel Square motor that's been unknown, because the virtual promise from everybody that participates on the Ariel Square 4 website is that you are going to ruin the motor unless you do this. So now you have an unknown Ariel Square motor that you've run without cleaning the sledge traps so far. So you're in violation of the principle, Andy. Are you going to take it apart and obey it's not even a legend, it is a religious commitment that the Ariel group has to cleaning these sledge traps.
It's just a thing you do.
It's a thing you do, and there's not a chance that if you ever sold it, the first thing someone's going to ask is, did you clean the sledge traps? All right. And so that there's not a chance that you're going to be able to sell it with any of our Ariel group that's knowledgeable about it, because they simply do not allow the transfer of ownership of an Ariel Square 4 without verification of having the sledge traps cleaned. So, Andy, is the motor coming out? Are you doing the sledge traps?
I'm going to TBD, because honestly, once I get everything off, all the wiring's going to have to be done. Everything's going to have to get, I don't want to paint it and restore it, but at least cleaned, because all the chrome's flaked in and it's rusty. So by the time I get all the ancillary items off and
just tell me what your feeling is now. Your feeling now is, are you going to do it because you believe in it?
Probably. I probably will.
Going to take your chances?
Yes, I probably will end up doing the traps, because I have a feeling I'm going to get into it anyway. And boy, I sure would rather regret having spent it's supposed to take 6 hours. Now, it takes 6 hours if you know what you're doing and have the aerial guy over your shoulder looking and watching you and telling you what to do.
Based on the fact that you don't ruin any fasteners or other bolts going in after it, which is sure to be ruined. And then, of course, these are going to be, there's two different types of British fasteners, right? There's the British standard whatever, and then there's something else or whatever. And evidently this is going to be a mix of both, I hear, from what I hear. Yeah. So I'm afraid of touching the nuts and bolts.
So truth be told, I will probably get it back together and run around the block. But before I do any serious anything on it, I probably will pull the engine and do the traps. But I mean, it pumps oil. I know that's
Yeah,
not the telltale, but I got oil spitting back out of the tank.
that's a good sign.
And
Yeah, definitely.
Sean seems to think, just send it. It ran. It's probably not going to blow up on you tomorrow, so just, put it back together and ride it.
Well, there is something to that because what I understand is that there's this religious commitment that every Ariel Square Four will fail by overheating the rear cylinders, and it's due to the fact that the sludge traps are blocking the oil flow to the crankshaft, and so you're going to have a catastrophic failure. A connecting rod's going to come off and burst through the case. All right, so that seems to be everybody's experience who chooses to post on the website. Now there is a guy that says, hey, listen, the whole problem with the Ariel running hot in the back cylinders is that we've never really had a very good fuel mixture and that the back runs lean. And that if you correct, his idea is that if you make sure that you're running the correct fuel mixture and getting enough fuel in the back cylinders, that is the primary problem for where things overheat. Now, of course, these two religious worlds collide on the little forum there. And some guys will, continue to swear that it's this sludge problem. Other guys will. There's a minority of guys that continue to swear that it is a problem with getting the right fuel mixture to the rear cylinders so they don't run as hot. So, Andy, where do you decide? Where are you going to be in this religious quest to find out the truth about the Ariel Square Four? Are you going to pick any one idea over the other?
To be honest with you, I probably won't. The more I talk about it, the more I realize I'm not going to clean those goddamn sludge straps. I mean, I know that because it's in Oklahoma, my time there when I'm there is finite, and space certainly is as well. I don't want to bridge this thing over years. It's probably worth doing that, but I will get it back together and run it around because it's. By the way, I've slipped into we're talking about British things, but I've kind of slipped into a British black hole, a rabbit hole, whatever. I'm suddenly need all the British projects.
There's a few other things that we have to have, don't we?
Yeah. But with this Ariel, I feel good having it, and it kind of feels like, well, I didn't really have the time and the space to work on a giant project like that this month. But I did happen to have some money to where I could acquire it and work on it later. You know what I mean? That's just how this is working out. So I know that I will probably just put it back together and not clean those sled straps. I don't know. TBD. We'll see.
Well, ask me what I'm going to do, Andy.
What are you going to do with yours?
I'm going to take it apart and clean the sludge straps.
Because you're a good citizen. Yeah.
Well, because like you said, because my motor's already lying beside the frame, it just makes sense to go ahead and get it out and go through it. Although I am suspect that really is the primary problem with the overheating. I believe the fuel guy, the guy that figured out that there's not enough fuel, getting to the rear cylinders. So I'm going to be more intent on getting the right carburation overall. But I think it doesn't. It to me, it's not a big setback since it's already laying there. The motor's complete, but it's not in the frame. So I'm going to go ahead and do the sludge traps on it, and but I'm going to go ahead and mess with it. I'm going to go after some non-standard ideas after that to improve the electrics and the charging and whatever. We'll go into that when I get there, but I've got some ideas about how I want to do that. I'm afraid to mention it early because it'll just give all the Ariel religious zealots a chance to criticize me. But so I'm going to wait till the last minute before I disclose what horrible things I've done to eradicate a weak charging system.
Well, Jason, who was on, Jason last week was on, or last 2 weeks ago. Anyway, last time would be a good resource too. I know he's got off the cuff. He'll have 1,000 different yes or no's. Don't even try that kind of things.
That would be helpful. And there's a number of other modifications I would consider. So mine's definitely in resto mod mode. So it's fun to collect a variety of parts and think about it. Like I mentioned before, I don't have to have period forks in the front. Any forks will do. I don't have to have a period front wheel because I'm not restoring a museum piece or anything like that. So to me, a front wheel off of a later model British bike with a great front brake is a worthy upgrade. I won't feel like I've cheated myself out of something by doing that. So I'm looking forward to making a few of those things just better to ride. But I do like staying within the parameters of what it's supposed to look like. Because I do love the looks of the original tanks. The original fenders are a little bit expensive to acquire. I'll see about repops or whatever if I have to. But I do like that single seat solo period look from the 40s and early 50s the best. And to me, as it strays towards later in the 50s, I realized that was a better model of the Square Four, but I don't like the looks nearly as much as I do for the Mark. I love the Mark One and the Mark Two look. Ariel Square Four is the best, so I'm kind of happy with that situation.
Well, and the way that things work out, I want to, obviously that we have another drove somewhere to get a British thing to talk about. But while we're on, you mentioned fenders. I don't know if I told you not. My wife, I talk a lot of shit about my wife, but you know this, and truth be told, like, I fucking love my wife. She's awesome. She had a serendipitous moment at work when a coworker found out they couldn't go to Formula One in Monaco and had extra tickets.
Oh,
yes. And
this is sounding interesting.
My birthday is right around that time. And so, dear that she is, she asked me if I'd be interested in going to, this little race in the race of all race places this summer for my birthday. And I said, well, I'll think about it. It sounds fine. So we're going to go. Yeah, no, of course. Like, are you serious? Like, wait a minute. I got an Ariel. I like the people I live with. I have like my financial prospects aren't dire. I have pretty good health right now. And my wife just got tickets to F1 in Monaco. Something's about to happen to me. I'm waiting
Andy,
for the other.
Things are definitely going your way because one, your wife is a lovely person, and two, you're a hard guy to love. And the fact that the fact that she wants to give you this is testimony to what a lovely person she is, and the fact that the universe is willing to overlook all your bullshit. Boy, that's a pretty good season you're in.
I'm coming up Andy right now. In spite of myself, I'm okay. I mean, it doesn't always feel like it, but right now, literally right now, I feel really grateful for the things that are in my life.
You're living the life of a successful, decent person, which is not exactly how everyone thinks of you.
Goddamn. Yeah. For better or worse, it's true. Well, so
way to go, Andy. You're in your stride.
That's a humble brag, I realize. But the point is that I'm able to what I'm going to do is fly into London. And I have an old friend my old roommate that I lived with when I was there his door's always open, so I have a place to stay. And so I'm going to take the 4 or 5 days before and go Craigslisting whatever the equivalent is in London to find Ariel bits.
Oh, that should be good.
And make
we're going to need
friends.
some bits. Yep.
Yeah,
and get some tips. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so make a list, and I'm going to start, barking up trees and making some friends across the pond, and sort of check some things off the list. I don't think I've never been to Ace Cafe. I'd like to go to Bike Shed. There's this, bike cafe in North London.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a good trip. I'm looking forward to it. But I'm going to try and maximize my downtime to do some shopping for the Ariels.
How many people are going to England to shop for Ariel parts on an expedition that ends in Monaco at the race? So that's a pretty top notch experience.
It's charmed. Yeah, I'm pretty lucky to be here right now.
Well, I think maybe I've been wrong. Is that you're just a better person than I am, because I never have that kind of decent shit happen to me. So I'm going to reverse my viewpoints. Usually, I always thought I was a little bit better than you, but as it turns out, I'm not. And so I'm going to have to submit to that reality.
I'm empirically a better person than you. That's what.
Yeah, I mean, the universe is investing a lot more in you than they are me. So I guess I have to conclude that my perceptions have been incorrect. So
now to counterpoint that, I would challenge it, because I really want a lot of things. I have a hole in me that is not filled with anything that I can get my hands on.
There's a certain level of counseling that we both need, because we are not fulfilled. and trying
Yeah.
to fill our make our happiness based on material possession. So there's a certain
Well,
problem that we have.
so one of those vacancies is a Land Rover product.
Oh yeah, I remember you were thinking about getting a Land Rover and you bought an Arcadia,
Well, I inherited
right?
an Acadia, and so now I can't justify a late model purchase. Yes.
Yeah. No, what all I'm saying is that you were out looking for a Land Rover product and you ended up with an
Oh,
Arcadia.
yes, yes, that's true.
Which,
That's
which,
true.
yeah, which, I mean, that happens. You got to pay attention to the reality of like you said, either you inherited it or the fact that you wanted something that started most days. Yeah, I get it. You know, you
Well, I still want one.
can't necessarily.
And now
You should. They're lovely.
you're Rover rich, and that has to do with your recent long trip.
Yes, yeah. I left the house looking for some British junk, and I was able to find a 1994 Range Rover Classic in Beluga Black in a garage in Atascadero, California. Second owner, the first owner was her father. Second owner was this lovely lady, and she had the Rover in her garage. It quit 3 years ago. She put it in there and left it, and I decided I was going to resurrect it. And so we talked on the phone. We came down to a number. Um, I left the house with the tow bar in the back of my Volkswagen Touareg and drove out there and stayed at Motel 6 for one day and fitted the tow bar to the Beluga Black 1994 Range Rover, 129,000 miles, new BFG Goodrich tires.
Hmm.
And I rolled it out and washed it, hooked up the front tow bar, took the fender off, had drilled a couple holes, and I drove it home. And I got it home and went through the sequence of what it takes to make a Range Rover run that's been sitting for 3 years. Um, and I'll just give you the short story. It would not start. And the main culprit was because, again, you know how I hate disinformation and lost information when it comes to fixing something.
Hmm.
Um, everybody, so immediately I identify I don't have any fuel pump action. And so I think, well, I'll replace the fuel pump. But before I do, I'll check the relay. So you check the relay and the fuel pump, and then you have to check the inertia switch in case that's been triggered because that shuts off the fuel. There's a
Hmm.
security protocol. There's a little bit too much wiring bullshit, going on. But I work my way through it, and what I find is that there's a 10 amp fuse hidden underneath the passenger seat that needed to be replaced.
And that was it.
One, yeah, but and someone had already gone through the sequence. They'd put in a new fuel pump, they'd put in a new relay, and there's this one little tiny 10 amp fuse that's hiding underneath the seat over there that it needed as well. So that's what brought it to life. And then I was able to kind of, I went ahead and did a few other things to it to kind of resurrect it, just so that because I didn't want to have troubles with it. And it is lovely and clean, and it looks good. And I decided that I cannot own it because it's black. I live at the end of a dirt road in the middle of a
Yeah.
desert with a black car. And as much as I love that thing, there's not a day that goes by that you shouldn't be washing it.
Yeah.
It is just, I mean, I love it. I love driving it. I figured out some performance things. I got a few secrets to share with the Rover guys later on, that'll make your Rover experience happy. But you know what? A black car is a city dwelling car that belongs in a pavement world because this thing, I don't care where I wax it here at home. I drive it down literally the dirt road section of my house. My driveway, you've been here, is about 100 yards long, right? Go down the
Mhm.
driveway, it's 100 yards, and then it's another 200 yards to the paved road. So I only have 300 yards of graded dirt road that I have to go down, but it's enough to completely make your car look filthy every single time. And then it rains here, of course. We get weather, but it has made me. I've never once gotten out and looked at the car and thought, "Look at that. That's clean. That's the way I like it to look." I look at it, I go, "I just cleaned it 5 minutes ago, and now I've got to clean it again." You ever had a black car?
Yeah, my truck. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I just cannot stay on top of it. So I love it. I may keep it for a little while longer, but I just very, very difficult to make a long-term commitment to a car that wants to be constantly washed, and I can't stand to see it dirty. It'd be one thing if it's like it looks good dirty, Black cars,
Yeah.
a black Range Rover does not look good dirty. It looks like a junker, and this thing is
Well,
not a junker. It's kind of pristine,
it's such
you
a
know.
nice they're nice cars. Um
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
really nice thing to drive. I drove it back and forth to Texas and drove it back and forth to Colorado or California one time. Since I've had it, I put about 7,000 miles on it, and it is just, I mean, a strange variety of things still work on it. Which I'm just thrilled about, and I think I could be happy with it for almost forever, but I just don't know how to reconcile the black. So
That's funny. It's funny. It's like the one thing. Where'd you go to get it? You went to
it was California,
California.
Tascadero. Yeah.
There was something in Colorado. Was that another Rover? Or no?
What
Because
did I
you've
go
got
to
a
Colorado
Discovery.
for? Oh, I bought that down the street. So what was funny is that right after I brought the Range Rover home, 94 Range Rover Classic, just down the street from my house, there's this junky, faded red, metallic red maroon, 1996 Discovery, and it won't start. The guy wants to sell it. He's got it there for $1,500, and so a few people tipped me off to it. I'm thinking, I don't want a Discovery. I don't like the way they look. I don't like the red color. I don't want to pay $1,500 for a junky Discovery. I'll just keep going with my my beautiful black Beluga Range Rover. And then about 3 weeks later, I drove by that thing every day. And of course, what happened? I'll just stop and look at it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
How this ends. So I stop and look at it. Guy comes out. We shoot some starting fluid in it, and it turns over. So I know it's got a fuel pump problem, which I've already just recently been through. So I know how to do that. But it started up on the starting fluid. So I thought, okay, it's got a chance. And then the guy said to me, I'm going to take it for scrap today because I want it out of here unless you can give me 500 for it. I thought, well, I'm giving you 500 for it. So I got it for
Yeah.
500 and I towed it home. And I ordered up a replacement fuel pump. I don't ever buy the right fuel pump for the cars anymore. I always just buy the standard little core Walbro pump unit and install
Mm-hmm.
it. That'll make sense to fuel pump guys, because nowadays you take out a fuel pump, it's a receptacle and a filter. It's on a rack. It goes down in the tank, and it's got the fuel gauge stuff kind of connected to it half the time. And so it's this whole setup, right? It's like $400. And it turns out if you just replace the electric fuel pump, which is the part that failed, a Walbro pump is about $30. But I decided to buy a Chinese repop of the Walbro pump for $17. And I just took it out and I soldered up the connections and put it in. Thing just runs flawlessly. Since then, I've taken it to New Mexico and to Texas once to go scrounge parts for something else. And I had to do, fix up a few things to it. It wouldn't stay in the same lane, so I had to deal with some handling issues and swivel joints and balls and tightening up certain things, replacing U joints and ball joints. But eventually, now I got it. The thing goes down the road at 70 miles an hour. It's straight as an arrow. It's easy to drive, and now it's my throwaway Rover. So anything that's too nice, like if I have to go put something inside that I don't want to scratch up the back or anything, I take the white one because I painted it white since I got it. And with Rust-Oleum, by the way. Total cost $75 for paint.
Is that a roller paint job?
No, I sprayed it, but that did
Okay.
include all the masking tape and everything. So $75 paint job and $13 fuel pump. And it has been flawless until last week when it ate up its power steering pump seal, or the pump is shit, which is a very common occurrence. So I'm expecting the worst there. But nonetheless, I've got 2 Land Rovers parked in the driveway. And what's funny is that the one I painted white, I haven't washed it since July. It looks perfect. It looks clean right now. And the black Range Rover has been washed literally every third day and wiped down with detailer to maintain its black non-dusty finish.
Yeah.
So
I love that
there you go.
you're that fussy over the black Range Rover. Like I've never known you to be fastidious about the cleanliness of any other than just like, well, it's knock the dirt chunks off or something. But to hear the wax
Yeah.
on this is bothering you.
Yeah, no, I am particular about it, but it's just because it's such in good shape, so it seems a shame to let it go backwards. But like the white one that I painted with the Rust-Oleum, I don't care about that. We'll bomb that through the bushes and scrape all the paint off eventually, and I'll just touch it up or not. I don't care about that one. I got $500 in it, and it's worth about $700, in its top form. It's just not a valuable vehicle at the moment. But I think the Discovery ones will be later on. They're kind of coming on. But anyway, it's a long-term deal for me to keep that one. But the black classic 94 Range Rover is a little bit of a has a little bit of a following. So someone will want that because it's so clean, absolutely rust free, and so many things are perfect on it. I'll sell that on Bring a Trailer at some point. But because it's so clean, I can't bear to see it get away from me, you know. But in terms of what I would rather own, yeah, I'd rather own a slightly beater Range Rover or Discovery that I can just use the hell out of and use it everywhere. And if someone comes out, like you come out and said, "Oh, I've got to go to, I want to go pick up something," it's like, yeah, you take this to Oklahoma. I don't care. And if it died on the way, I'd say just take the plates off of it and shove it in the ditch. I don't have to be committed to it, and I feel lovely about that. Where the black Range Rover is so nice and it's so hard to come across them in this good a shape, I feel like I got to be a little bit more careful with it. And that's the place I never want to be in automobile ownership in terms of trucks that I use. I don't want to have something that I've got to be worried about. So
Yeah.
I think this should go to somebody who wants a vintage, Range Rover, wants to keep it at their mountain cottage, and drive it down to the local Whole Foods and get fancy food and drive back to their house and, occasionally shovel out their driveway and drive it in the snow, on the way to a fancy coffee shop. That's where this one should probably end up because it's so perfect.
Yeah. So I've been digging. I've been out of that hole for a little bit, so I appreciate you kicking me right back in there. So now I got to look up Range Rovers. Like I have enough shit to do.
Yeah, you're gonna have
Well,
to decide what vintage you want to get.
well, yeah, I just don't have that much experience with the Rovers, and I guess the one that I did see was a Range Rover, but it must have been a later model, and it felt very plasticky and not high quality. Whereas it sounds like the earlier ones, pre '09 or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
are to a much different standard. Or maybe not,
Yeah,
but at least they had the.
there is something to that. It kind of goes both ways. There was a couple of years where the interiors were famously shit because like all the finishes peeled off, and it was a real betrayal for the guy that spent a few bucks on a Range Rover. Then later on, like you said, around after 2008 or 2009, they kind of got that sorted, and those vintage ones are okay. Um, but probably the biggest difference is deciding where you want to be in terms of complication because they're just infinitely complicated. As they go on the line, they first came to the United States in 1987. They started building those back in the early 70s, actually.
Mhm.
But by the time they came here in 1987, they had a few complications already. They were getting, all the things are there. It's got cruise control, air conditioning, and all this kind of stuff, and then a complicated security system. In a few later years, and all those things were nice at the time. But obviously, right now, like if my alarm goes off and disables the car, that is a long-term solution to figure out is to get the fucking alarm turned off, or disabled. And if I buy a Range Rover a couple years newer than that, there is no disabling the alarm. You're just going to have to fix it. And so,
Mm.
I mean, I hate to see a car get sidelined because of keys, because you can't get a key made for it because you got to have a transponder key that's queued to the, to the ECU. In some cases, you can't do that with these older cars. And then having an alarm issue. To me, those are two ridiculous reasons to bring a car off the road.
Yeah.
But so anyway, there's that spectrum. But I will tell you this, that if you ever decide to own a Land Rover, the one thing that's going to make you say, I'm happy with my Land Rover, is that the fact that it has such great suspension. I mean, you'll ride it down the road, it's good. You'll drive it off-road fast. It soaks everything up. And they are just such nice, decent, soft riding off-road machines and on-road machines. They're not good handlers. You don't see how fast I can go around this turn. They're not fast, but I can drive it all day across the country and it's quiet and it just, it floats over everything on the road. And so the driving experience can be really attractive to the right kind of person if you're willing to swallow, the typical British bullshit, you know.
Mhm.
And
Well,
stay away from the ultra complicated late model ones, which, it's funny. I can find a late model Range Rover every day, for $2,000 or $3,000. And they have some sort of error code, and it's like the transmission's out of it, and the transmission's probably not out of it, but you'll never figure out the computer components to make that transmission work
yeah.
on your own.
Well,
So it might as well be out of it. So anyway, there's those kind of things that happen. So
late model would be what after 10? I'm
yeah,
finding a lot of '04, '03 because there's the one body style that was like it looked like a Ranger, but it had these two little air vents on the side that were like a gray.
yes, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Enthusiasts, some of the enthusiasts will tell you that whatever that model is, it called the L322? Type in just Range Rover L322 and see if I have that number right real quick.
22. I see L322. Yeah, that's the one.
That's the number? Okay. There are people that say that that's the best Range Rover that's ever built. And it's before it got, it's still very complicated, but they'll say that's before it got infinitely complicated. And that it was a really solid period in their production, and the quality was good and the motors ran for a while. And so there are some that say that that is, definitely one to try to pick up for dependability and a reasonable amount of simplicity. And the only way it gets simpler is if you go all the way back to like the era that I'm in, which is the original Range Rover and the original Discovery that came out. Those are much less complicated, but harder to find when they're not rusty and not junk. And I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think what creature comforts I'm giving up. I don't have an onboard entertainment system. I don't have a touch screen, and you don't have any of those type things in there. And if you want those, you got to stay towards the lower stuff. But I don't mind having a dash with gauges on it. Remember what those are? They're like,
Yeah.
I'll just remind you, they're little circular things, and they have little needles that move, and the needles indicate something that you need to know. And you can kind of do it at a glance. Well, mine has those, and I'm happy with it.
The twitchy clocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Now, okay. I'm going to put that down and not buy a Range Rover. The van's still at the shop. Wait for that to get done. But okay. Well, so we got British bits, and they were hard won. And so they're not, yours seems like they're done, but we still got 2 Ariel long-term projects. Get your list going, thinking about it.
Yeah. How much space in your luggage are you setting aside for me?
I'm taking a couple pairs of underwears and a nice shirt.
Okay,
and,
so you're gonna have,
you know what I mean? So yeah, luckily it'll be spring, so I guess I'll be wearing shorts.
Yeah.
That'll take up less room. So I'm pretty easy going on that.
All right.
So we'll have updates on that. That's not till later in May, but yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Good luck at the races. I wonder where you'll sit and what you'll see. I'm curious to see what your report with that would be, because I mean, obviously you stake out a section on the track or wherever your tickets are, and you get to see everybody come by. And how many laps do they do in Monaco? Do you know?
That's 60.
I bet if you look it up, you'll see
56. I don't know.
I'll be curious,
I'll
but anyway, so you'll see everybody pass by your section, and so. I mean, I'm assuming that the sound and that action will be incredible, but yeah, I'm just curious what it's like if the overall experience of knowing what's happening in the race is easy sitting trackside, And then the other thing I want to know, Andy, is that what kind of snacks do you get when you're at Monaco? It sounds like I'm sure there's not a guy wandering around selling popcorn and beer, so I can't imagine that's it.
I will not be having a corny dog. I'm sure.
I want to hear what sort of fancy snacks you choose, and I want to hear what they cost. Because my guess is that I think you and your wife, you're going to be $200 into food. I think for the one day trackside. Yeah. I think that's where you're going to be.
Well, so I
can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, if there were any other, it's like if you were ever going to go to one Formula One, and like face it, how many of these am I going to go to, right? Like how many times am I going to go to Formula One? Like if you're going to go to one, Monaco's the one to go to.
Monaco's the one to go to. Las Vegas is the one that we will end up going to most because it's close to both of our houses.
Yeah, and tickets are super cheap because nobody wants to go and everybody hates it, and the cars explode. And did you see the last one?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, or like, and I don't know this year if they're racing in Austin again too. But like from where I live right in between Las Vegas and Austin, so I could technically visit 2 tracks if they're both there. I don't follow Formula One enough to know what their schedule is, but anyway, but Monaco obviously is the top of of any place I would want to go see a race. Well, here's for example, I don't want to go to Bahrain; it's too damn hot. I don't want to go to Saudi; that's too damn hot. I'm trying to think of where else do I love the food. So sorry, I'm going to skip Japan. Not my food choice. Goodwood, going to England. What a disappointment that'll be for food. So I'm not going there. Maybe Spa. Maybe I could go to Spa or and I'm assuming all the Italian races you get good food at.
Yeah.
Where do they race? Where do they race in Italy?
It's Imola.
Yeah.
Imola. Yeah. Well, so here's two things, and then we got to go. One is
Okay.
if we do ever go to another Formula One, um, please be conscious if I'm ever that guy that says, "Well, when I went to Monaco."
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you will be that guy, and I cannot wait to catch you on it. I cannot wait.
I
You're gonna
just
drop that
realized, like,
name.
oh
Yeah, just like
God,
your celebrity friends. You're just gonna
I
not be able
hate
to
that
stop
guy.
speaking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Jeez. And then the other thing is
Oh, wait,
the
real quick. What watch you gonna wear to Monaco?
you
You
know,
probably
I
wear a
have
Rolex.
given it some thought. I've
I
given
think,
it some
yeah. Already you've thought about wearing the Rolex. I know because that's got to be the.
No, no, no,
You need
no,
to have.
no. That's
I'm gonna say $300 jeans, a $200 T-shirt. I'm gonna say you spent $120 on a belt, and then I think you got
no.
about $400 into a pair of shoes, and then you're gonna wear your Rolex, and you're gonna make it look like this is just a casual day.
I
You
guess
know?
it's every day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like this
I
is
feel like
you every day.
you kind of have to though in
I
Monaco
guess,
at
yeah. No,
F1.
it's the crowd. You're right. You're right.
So
You're right.
you're you're not that far off, but you're far off. Like the jeans, I'll own up to. Anyway, so here's the rub of this is that's the 25th,
Okay.
26th. The only other motor swap meety type things that are in the EU are on that weekend.
Yeah.
So before and after, there's nothing really going on, except the week after is Isle of Man.
Oh, that would be really fun to check that out.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I wonder if I
Well,
could
yeah, you have to
scoot
see how
up.
long you could delay. Yeah.
So
But I just want to go back to Monaco for a second. I think you're going to be 200 into food. I think you're going to be 800 to 1,000 into apparel. That's what I think you're going to be. So
yeah,
you got like I think you got about $1,200 to spend just on race day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Just to
and
go,
then
just to
and
show
then
up.
what's an overnight in Monaco cost? That's got to be a $300 to $400 deal,
It's
right?
covered.
For
We're doing an Airbnb in Nice, which is, a train ride away.
yeah,
Staying in Monaco, I think, is unobtainable
yeah,
for the likes of us, But
yeah. So I think you're $2,000 in before the ticket.
just showing
You know,
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I love the idea of going, and I love that you're going, and I love that you're paying for it. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, it'll be fun, and yeah, we'll see. But the other bit of that is, well, there's all the intrigue around it, and I've sort of the Netflix show has certainly
Oh, I love
helped.
that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but
Completely.
like I've always been keen on it and interested, but you need that sort of foot in. It's just like football or rugby, like, and I mean American football even or soccer or rugby, but like you just need a little bit of background and then you can
Yeah.
understand it. But I never had that, like, I didn't grow up with my dad, so it was like we never had that sort of football Sunday type thing
Hmm.
where I knew who was who to root for.
Let me just say that's the reason why you continue to buy things to fill the void in your life because you didn't watch sports with your dad when you were young. But nonetheless,
I
go ahead.
might, I may,
That's a
I
little
bet
insight
it's.
into your therapy.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know that, but I think a
Yeah.
Studebaker might fix that. I think a Studebaker might.
Probably. That will take care of it.
But you need that sort of foot in, and what Netflix did for certainly for me, but I think for a lot of people was like, oh, there's a face behind the car, or it's Ferrari, but your allegiance to Ferrari only goes so far. But once you start to think about, the guy behind it and the team and the drama and the bullshit, um, it gets certainly a lot easier to root for something, right? Like,
Yes, because you're right. I think there's a minor connection. There's some brand loyalty for the cars,
yeah.
because like I'm always disappointed to find out that Red Bull runs Honda engines because I don't care about Honda engines. It's like
Yeah.
now they win everything. They win
But that's the thing. It's
everything.
like, well, of
But
course they win. They're running the brand new Honda engines. Like, of course they are.
yeah,
That makes it.
to me it's just they're running Honda Accord engines. Who cares? Which they're not. But I pull for Aston Martin until I find out that they're not running Aston Martin engines. But the drivers you get mildly connected to. You see some of them, and of course, me, whoever the oldest driver is the guy I'm
Who's
pulling
your
for.
guy? Who's your guy?
Alonso.
Fernando Alonso. Exactly. I don't
Yeah,
know
he's my
why.
guy.
I have a
Well,
I
because
have a man crush on Fernando
uh,
Alonso just because of
well because
his
he
experience.
he raced Paris Dakar or the new Dakar. He went out and raced Dakar in the off season. He wants to race in Indy. I mean, he wants to get Monaco, Dakar, and an Indy race in his lifetime. And meanwhile, he's still killing it at his age in Formula One. So by far my favorite guy. And he seems to be like a relatively decent person. Second favorite person, Carlos Sainz. I love Carlos Sainz because actually I love his dad, Carlos Sainz, who wins Dakar just about every year. So there's that.
That's awesome. It's gonna be fun with all the Hamilton going to Ferrari, and then Leclerc's hometowns, Monaco. So there's all that, and was dropping Carlos Sainz the right thing to do. All that bullshit that I just had no frame of reference before the Netflix thing, and I hate to be that sort of late jumper on her. But like I said,
I was. I mean, that's how we all came into it. It was because of Netflix, Which, by the way, Netflix has transformed a lot of sports and made them interesting. But anyway, let's just sum this up. You're going to spend a pile of money on fantasy snacks at Monaco. I can't wait to hear what you got and what it cost you.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Good call.
This podcast is produced and edited by Hole in the Head Moto. Follow along on the socials at Hole in the Head Moto. Or you can send an email to actually@holeintheheadpod.com. We'll see you next time.